is still the standard. I love the TV series they did off of it that became a sequel that you didn't realize was a sequel to begin with, and all these other things. But the one part of it that, as I looked back on it, about the movies that truly scared me and truly still make me feel uneasy, it didn't make me feel as uneasy over time, because it was the launch of a trope, and I'll get into some trouble with that in a minute here, you'll see. But when I was really thinking about like a movie that just scared the shit out of me and still kind of does, and this is where I'm wincing and waiting for the tomatoes. It was what movie that, like you said, Greg, when it caught you in just the right way at just the right time. So I'm going to take you back to the 90s, back to early guerrilla marketing, dial-up internet, and I will, try and paint a picture of standing in a very big line here in Massachusetts in the Kendall Square Cinema over in Cambridge to see the Blair Witch Project, which is, of course, I know. I mean, I can see the smiles on the faces. It is the launch of 1,000 tropes. It is the granddaddy of the found footage horror film. But there was something so done right about that movie at that time, at that place. It's hard to maybe watch it in the same way now, but I knew so little about it. And what was interesting was there was a lot of marketing going on it, kind of trying to make it look like a real documentary. They had a website that I found after, which was a big deal, by the way. Back then, nobody had a website. It was a big deal to have a website. Nowadays, hell, we have a website. You can go to. We have a Facebook page. All of these things, but to have a movie that have that and to have actors talking about the film as if it were real had already sort of pre-scared people. I was not even exposed to that. I just didn't even know what the hell I was going to see. My friend said, "Hey, let's go see the Blair Witch Project," and everybody this was. Thinking back on a time that seems anathema now, packed shoulder to shoulder in the lobby waiting to get into this film. So, but I'm looking at the poster and it talks about the group of filmmakers and it disappeared and then the footage was found. And something about it hits me exactly right in that moment of like, wait, am I actually going to watch a documentary here? And I had that thought for a moment and that carried with me into the theater. So it goes dark. And I'm watching the film and I'm watching it unfold. And what became clear as from early on in the movie, as these three filmmakers, and by the way, I'm back from LA. I've moved back from LA at this point. I am a film student from, and I've lived in LA. So it's this, there's a personal element of it for me there. But as they're going out and they're tromping out and they're making their documentary as such, you realize they're going to get lost in the woods. And that's when I really started to get fucking scared. Just alone in and of itself. I'm a city kid. I'm a suburb boy and all that. I didn't go to overnight camp. I really still don't even enjoy camping that much. God bless you if you do. It's really not yucking your proverbial yum here. But it's just that thing. It's just like, oh shit, they're going to get lost in the fucking woods. And they've got camping equipment, so they kind of feel like they're prepared for it, but you can tell they're not really prepared for it. They're just, so if nothing else, they're going to slowly starve to death or die of thirst, and we're going to see it on film, right? But then you add in, of course, the spooky noises and everything else, and that they're in the western part of Maryland, of which I have been in, and I'm a Civil War guy, and I've been into that, actually up near where the film's supposed to take place, where those woods are thick. And then it adds in that other idea on top of it of like, forget the supernatural aspect of it. What if you were just in the woods and you just had some hillbillies who wanted to fuck with you before they killed you? Just because they could. I don't know. They don't like you. You're Yankees, you're whatever. People don't realize in that part of Maryland, there's some thick accents, man. And there are some attitudes that just, you don't want to be in the wrong place. You don't want to be in the wrong farm.
The right? South is the South in a lot of places in this country. People don't realize that.
No, and Maryland sent, there was a first Maryland on both sides of the Civil War, so we're just speaking about it, right? So you add that aspect in it, but then lastly, there is that bit of what is left up to your imagination. And I only recently found out that this part in that film that still gives me a little bit of goosebumps when I think about it was a mistake, but it was a mistake that made the movie 100%. There is a bit where they are running from their tent. They don't know what's happening. They're terrified. And the girl, I guess her name is Heather, and the actress' name was, that may have been her real name, is just screaming. And at one point she screams, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?" And she's terrified. Like, the beauty of it is they had put him out in the woods. They gave him just, again, with the directing, they just gave him notes for what they would do every day. They wouldn't interact with them. They allowed them to film. And that's how they got these performances out of them. But the cameraman doing the work that night was supposed to pan to the left, and you would get a brief glimpse of the Blair Witch. She was going to be lit from behind, and everything else was going to happen. She was going to have, kind of eye makeup, spookiness, all of that. But he forgot to do it. And and it made the film. I remember it scaring the shit out of me at the time. It still gives me goosebumps now. And like my father said, it was the power of the imagination. I couldn't see what she saw, but I could hear the fear in her voice. And she was genuinely scared. They set it up right for her that night. They had him running through the woods, and they didn't tell her that, whoever that actor or actress was going to be backlit and doing all that. So that fear you hear from her is so true and so genuine. She's not acting. She's genuinely afraid of what she saw. But had that cameraman remembered to pan to the left like he was supposed to, would have ruined the whole goddamn thing, right? My father always said that the worst moment in Jaws is when you see the shark, right? But prior to that, there's always like, how big is this fucking thing?
Yes.
Right? And then you lose it. Same thing here, but and the beauty of Blair Witch, we never saw the shark. We never really got a clear picture of what the fuck was going on. And we drew in our own ideas of it. So at that time, at that moment, and still, I got to give it credit to this day. It'll never hit me the same way, right? It is your first kiss or whatever you want to say. It never happens like the first time. So it'll never hit me that same way that it hit me that night in the theater. But I got to give it credit for everything it got so right. And yes, launched 1,000 tropes, motion sickness, all of those things that went with it. And I it's one of those things I truly understand the eye rolls, but I got to give it its due. I mean, I just got to give it everything that it did internally and how it just scared the shit out of me. I mean, I really remember going home from that movie and having a hard time sleeping. I was a grown ass man. I was in my 20s at that point. It's one thing to see a movie when you're, young teens or still a young kid, but to be in your 20s and be like afraid to turn out the lights, man, I got to give you credit for that one. So.
All right. I mean, I don't disagree. I remember the hysteria around it when it first came out, and it was like a big thing. And it was like, you have to see it. You have to see it. But the thing was, I mean, I was kind of a independent film snob at the time. So, like if everybody liked it, fuck this garbage. And so it was kind of one of those movies, because the period that it was in, and by the time I had gotten around to finally watching it, a lot of it had been spoiled, a lot of it, right? Like a lot of people started like doing parodies of it and making fun of it, and they were already shit talking the film technique and that kind of thing. So I was like, all right, I kind of fucked it up. I didn't get to have that experience that you're talking about, where you like first see it and it really hits you, and what the filmmakers are trying to do really like sits with you. So I kind of missed out on that, but I don't, shit talk the shaky cam thing too much. I mean, it's like bullet time, like everybody's gonna do it, that.
That's where that's where I give it the credit in that film, because when you're the first to do it, you get to own that shit, right?
But they're the first to do it for the whole film. There are plenty of films that did it, but they understood, if we do this to our crowd for like an hour and a half, they're gonna fucking hate us at the end of it, because half of them are gonna be sick. Like, there's a reason why no one really tried to do it. I mean, you're the film student. Don't act like you didn't have many a professor be like, hey, by the way, if you do this on any of your projects, you will not fucking.
Oh yeah, no, fuck you if you bring me in. Oh no, it was fuck.
I gotta say
that handheld shit was entirely it. That's what a tripod's for, asshole.
I mean, right? So like Blair Witch is always interesting to me on a couple levels, and I'm sorry, people, but this is another moment where, frankly, when you're a minority of a hyper situation like our country can be around race, things become interesting. So, for example, when Blair Witch came out, even in that weekend, which I have to say, I appreciated how it took over. It felt really cool in a lot of different ways. It was almost like being alive during Orson Welles taking over the radio.
Absolutely.
Like, that's what it felt like for like the first, I'd say 36 hours. I mean, news was on it. Everyone was, people were legit walking around and being like, I don't know if they survived. And I'm listening to this at that time, like, all right, y'all. So y'all gonna be walking around thinking that for whatever reason, Hollywood's just gonna put a snuff film out, right? Like that's what we're going.
Yeah,
like,
I remember that. Yeah,
that's what we're going with right now. It's like Hollywood greenlit for some reason, and then like the rumor / myth that sort of, I think, even I'm not sure if the movie kicked this out or if someone around the movie did it, but basically what it was, and the reason why the first 36 hours is important, is it was, oh no, they snuck this version out. Like it was this is a copy. Like after this, the copy you're gonna see after this is gonna be like the washed down version. Like no, they switched it out. So
they definitely pushed some of that, and they also didn't have the actors do any press junkets till like months after. They really tried to heighten that sense. They were definitely trying to guerrilla market it, trying to let that impression out there.
And on that level, to your point, I applaud them. I will always applaud them. But even during the height of it, I'm like, for real, y'all, like that's what we're going with. This whole nation, we can't even fucking curse during that time. We couldn't even curse or show very graphic images on TV. Yet we're gonna have movie theaters across the country risk their business by all of them simultaneously pushing out fucking snuff films. Like, how does that work? How does that actually work? And then you have the people in the corner like, well, faces of death exist. And I'm like, all right, if I have to explain to you how that actually works, then we're in a whole different conversation. And I fucking hate you. By the time I got to it, the hype was like similar to Greg. The hype was basically to the point it's like, all right, it's impossible for any of this to be happening, even though I went into it understanding it. What I was pissed off is I don't know what y'all watched, because I'm like 20 minutes into the movie, like, I don't give a fuck who dies. Like, I can't stand any of you. I don't give a shit, real or not. I don't give a shit. Like, you're dead. You're done. Blair Witch, where are you? Take care of this shit. Handle this. You're fucking with some twigs of yours. They're moving rocks. You better get this bitch. Like, that's how I felt. Like, halfway through the movie, I'm like, I can't fucking stand it. And the funny part is, it segues into what I'm going to talk about with her. Drugs are an issue. In the sense of the guy who took me to go see it, one of my buddies, he ended up being investigated by DEA and a couple other agencies about drug trafficking. And funny enough, I'm actually on tape as well as many other people, because he was responsible for all of us getting tapped. So pretty fun there. And how drugs, I don't know if he was on drugs when we went to go see it. I sort of wish he shared, so it would have been funner for me. But like, also we got booed a little bit because I'm laughing halfway through. Like, I fucking hate everyone. So like, when they're like, we're gonna die, I'm cracking up, and people are like, shut up, that's so insensitive. Like, oh, first of all, I can laugh. Like, I'm not talking, I can laugh. Like, I'm, that's something you can do in a movie. They're like, sorry, I hate that movie. That movie just hits me on so many different levels.
I knew I was gonna open myself up to some vegetables being thrown at me. I get it. I totally get it. And like, that is why we come here. I don't want to always go with the safe take here.
This is why I'm starting to write down notes, because you just take me off my game.
As well you should.
I think when you hit it right, like that was exactly it. Like, that really was. And I think that, it does make it, whether, how much you want to shit talk it now, it's a unique entry into the horror genre. Like, no question about it. It earned its spot. Whether or not you thought it was kind of funny, like some parts are just fucking hilarious. Like, when she was panicking, I'm sorry, it was funny. Like RaShaun says, like, it was funny, but that's again, that's like there were boogers. Yeah, they were boogers.
She's right up her nose.
but that was the thing. Like by the time, if you got to it late, maybe that's what it is. If you got to it late, then